In this era of rapid scientific advancement, humanity is delving deeper into the nature of consciousness, exploring the psychological states that govern thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. Modern psychology is regarded as a scientific discipline that investigates the workings of the mind, helping individuals understand themselves and find ways to transform their suffering. However, there is something quite remarkable that few recognize: what modern psychologists are searching for, studying, and proving today was already thoroughly expounded by the Buddha more than 2,500 years ago. When the Blessed One attained enlightenment beneath the Bodhi tree, he not only realized the ultimate truth of the universe but also illuminated a path for human beings to liberate themselves from the perpetual suffering caused by ignorance of the mind. His teachings, therefore, are not merely religious doctrines but a profound system of thought, a science of consciousness, and a practical path leading to the cessation of affliction and the attainment of inner peace. When we compare the teachings of Buddhism with the findings of modern psychology, we cannot help but be astonished by the profound similarities between these two fields. Fundamental Buddhist principles such as impermanence, dependent origination, karma, the five aggregates, the Four Noble Truths, and the Noble Eightfold Path can all be understood through the lens of psychological science. What psychologists have only recently discovered regarding the workings of consciousness, the impact of emotions on mental well-being, and the brain's capacity for transformation through meditation has, in fact, been clearly expounded by the Buddha in the scriptures for millennia. So, what is the relationship between Buddhism and psychology? Do scientific discoveries further validate the Buddha's teachings? And most importantly, how can we apply this wisdom to our daily lives in order to cultivate peace, happiness, and enlightenment? Let us embark on this journey to uncover the profound connections between Buddhism and modern psychology. May these insights offer you a fresh perspective, deepen your understanding of yourself, and provide practical methods for cultivating a more awakened and fulfilling life. Modern psychology can be seen as a vast system of knowledge about human consciousness, yet to fully comprehend its nature, we cannot overlook the perspective of Buddhism, a tradition that has spent thousands of years contemplating and directly experiencing the mind. Before delving into the similarities between these two fields, we must first understand modern psychology and how it approaches the study of consciousness. Psychology is the scientific study of the mind, behavior, and emotions. From a scientific perspective, psychology is not merely a theoretical discipline but a rigorous system of empirical research methods. It not only examines surface-level phenomena but also seeks to analyze the root causes of various psychological states. Psychologists aim to explain how humans think, feel, and react to life circumstances. However, while modern psychology primarily relies on empirical scientific research to establish laws governing the mind, Buddhism has approached consciousness directly through meditation and deep introspection for thousands of years. This fundamental difference in approach has led to both intersections and divergences between Buddhism and psychology. Over its long history, psychology has developed multiple schools of thought, each offering distinct explanations for human behavior and consciousness. Despite their differences, they all attempt to answer fundamental questions. How do people think? How do emotions influence behavior? Can the mind be changed? And can individuals truly gain mastery over their own consciousness? Psychoanalysis, founded by Sigmund Freud, emphasizes the existence of the unconscious, a part of the mind that operates beyond direct awareness yet profoundly influences behavior and emotions. According to Freud, childhood experiences, psychological repressions, and inner conflicts are pushed into the depths of the unconscious and may manifest through dreams, subconscious behaviors, or other psychological expressions. From a Buddhist perspective, this concept of the unconscious can be compared to the storehouse consciousness, Alaya Vijnana, in Yogacara, mind-only, philosophy. According to Buddhism, the storehouse consciousness contains all the seeds, bija, the karmic imprints that individuals have accumulated over countless lifetimes. What Freud identified as the unconscious is merely a small fragment of the vast treasury of consciousness that Buddhism has long recognized. Behavioral psychology, represented by John B. Watson and B. F. Skinner, asserts that human behavior is shaped by external stimuli and can be conditioned through reinforcement. According to this school of thought, consciousness is not the determining factor of behavior, rather, habits formed over time play the decisive role. This notion aligns with the Buddhist concept of habitual tendencies, saskara. In Buddhism, habitual tendencies are psychological patterns accumulated over multiple lifetimes, shaping an individual's responses to circumstances. If a person continually nurtures negative thoughts, anger, and selfishness, these negative tendencies will become stronger. Conversely, if one cultivates mindfulness, generosity, compassion, and wisdom, wholesome tendencies will be reinforced. Humanistic psychology, championed by Carl Rogers and Abraham Maslow, emphasizes personal growth and human potential. Maslow introduced the hierarchy of needs, with the highest level being self-actualization, the realization of one's full potential and highest values. This closely parallels the Buddhist path of cultivation, where the ultimate goal is enlightenment, the realization of ultimate truth and liberation from all worldly attachments. While humanistic psychology focuses on personal development within a social context, Buddhism transcends the egoic self, guiding individuals toward liberation from suffering. Cognitive psychology studies how humans process information, think, and learn. It highlights the role of thought patterns in shaping emotions and behaviors. According to this school, if a person changes their way of thinking, they can transform their emotions and actions. This concept closely aligns with the Buddhist teaching on right thought, one of the 8 factors of the Noble Eightfold Path. The Buddha taught that thoughts shape one's reality. If a person constantly dwells on negative ideas, their mind will be consumed by suffering. Conversely, if they contemplate compassion, wisdom, and selflessness, their consciousness will be transformed in a positive direction. Today, scientific research is gradually unveiling the workings of the brain and consciousness. Neuroscientists have discovered that the brain is not a fixed structure but can change over time through experience and practice. This is known as neuroplasticity. This means that individuals can modify their habits, thoughts, and emotions through proper training. However, from a Buddhist perspective, consciousness is not merely a physical phenomenon but has a deeper essence that transcends the brain's functions. While the brain may serve as a medium for the mind's activities in this lifetime, it does not encompass the entirety of consciousness. Buddhism teaches that the mind can exist independently of the physical body and continues to undergo rebirth across multiple lifetimes. This is an aspect that modern science has yet to definitively prove. Nevertheless, studies on the effects of meditation on the brain reveal profound intersections between Buddhism and science. Researchers have found that long-term meditators have structurally different brains compared to non-meditators. They exhibit increased gray matter density in regions associated with attention, emotion regulation, and compassion. This suggests that the practice of mindfulness and meditative contemplation is not only spiritually meaningful but also yields scientifically measurable benefits. Overall, despite differences in methodology, both psychology and Buddhism share a common goal: to help individuals understand themselves, regulate their minds, and achieve a more peaceful life. While psychology explains the mechanisms of mental activity, Buddhism goes further by providing a path for transforming the mind and attaining ultimate liberation. In Buddhism, the mind is not a fixed entity or an unchanging essence, as some philosophical traditions have suggested. The Buddha taught that all phenomena in the world are impermanent, nothing is eternal or unchanging, and the mind is no exception. The mind is a continuous stream of psychological phenomena, arising and ceasing ceaselessly, much like a river that constantly flows. When one looks deeply into the nature of the mind, one realizes that it has no fixed form, no definite boundaries, but is instead an ever-moving process of arising, abiding, changing, and ceasing. The mind is a combination of many factors, arising from specific conditions and never existing independently. In Buddhist scriptures, the Buddha often compared the mind to an illusion, a dream, a flash of lightning in the sky, or a drifting cloud ever-changing, impossible to grasp, and fleeting. However, the mind also possesses certain distinct characteristics, and if one understands and masters it, one can attain peace and liberation from suffering. Dependent origination is the fundamental principle governing the functioning of the mind. Buddhism teaches that the mind does not exist independently outside of conditions but is always subject to causes and conditions. When these conditions change, the mind changes accordingly. For example, when a person encounters favorable circumstances, their mind may give rise to joy and peace. Conversely, when faced with adversity, the mind may generate afflictions and suffering. However, upon deep contemplation, one realizes that it is not external circumstances but the mind itself that determines whether one experiences peace or suffering. The same event may cause one person to suffer, while another sees it as an opportunity for growth. This reveals that the mind has no fixed nature and is always shaped by conditions. Dependent origination also points to the absence of a permanent self or independent ego. What we commonly refer to as I is, in reality, merely an aggregation of psychological and physical elements that are constantly changing and interacting. When the mind clings to the notion of a fixed self, one falls into attachment and, as a result, experiences suffering. However, if one understands that everything arises due to conditions, one can live with a light heart, let go of attachments, and attain inner freedom. To help beings understand the structure of human existence, the Buddha taught about the 5 aggregates, skandhas, the 5 components that make up an individual. This teaching is crucial in understanding non-self, anatta, and dependent origination. Form, rupa. This refers to physical elements, including the body and all material forms perceived through the senses. The form aggregate consists of the 4 great elements, earth, water, wind, and fire, the fundamental substances that constitute the physical world. The human body is merely a temporary combination of these elements, with no independent self. When the body decays, these elements return to their original state. Feeling, Vedana. This pertains to sensations that arise when the senses come into contact with objects. Feelings can be pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Regardless of their nature, all feelings are impermanent, constantly arising and ceasing. If one fails to recognize this, they become entangled in their sensations and are caught in an endless cycle of craving and suffering. Perception, sana. This is recognition, memory, and the ability to distinguish objects and concepts. Thanks to perception, one can identify and remember experiences. However, perception is also not fixed. It changes according to one's experiences and knowledge. A person may perceive something in one way today, but with new insights, their understanding may change entirely tomorrow. Mental formations, sankhara. These are volitional activities, tendencies, and mental inclinations that shape actions and karma. Mental formations determine the trajectory of one's existence, as they create karmic seeds. If one consistently thinks, speaks, and acts with kindness and wisdom, they generate good karma and reap wholesome results. Conversely, if one acts with greed, hatred, and delusion, they accumulate negative karma, leading to suffering both in the present and the future. Consciousness, Vijnana. This is the faculty of awareness and discernment of objects. When the eye perceives a form, the ear hears a sound, the nose detects a scent, the tongue tastes a flavor, the body feels touch, and the mind cognizes thoughts. This is consciousness. However, consciousness is not a fixed entity, as it is entirely dependent on conditions. When conditions change, consciousness also changes. If one clings to consciousness as a permanent self, they remain entangled in the cycle of birth and death. Through contemplation of the five aggregates, one realizes that there is no enduring self. All components of human existence are merely transient manifestations of interdependent conditions. The body will eventually disintegrate, feelings fluctuate, perceptions evolve, volitions shift, and consciousness arises and ceases in each moment. Understanding this liberates one from the attachment to a fixed self and releases them from the grip of craving, aversion, and ignorance. Instead, they cultivate equanimity, detachment, and a life in harmony with conditions. The most crucial aspect of contemplating the mind is to recognize its impermanence, its nature of suffering, and its lack of an independent self. When one understands that the mind is impermanent, they cease clinging to transient mental states. When they recognize that attachment to the mind leads to suffering, they learn to let go of delusive thoughts. And when they realize that the mind is devoid of a permanent self, they attain true liberation. In Buddhist practice, mastering the mind is the key to liberation. The Buddha taught numerous methods to help individuals transform their minds, ranging from contemplative practices such as meditation, mindfulness of the Buddha's name, and mantra recitation to ethical conduct such as generosity, morality, and patience. All these practices aim to help individuals gain insight into the nature of the mind, freeing themselves from its control, and using it as a tool to attain peace and enlightenment. When one learns to observe the mind, they gradually become aware of the thoughts and emotions arising and ceasing within. If a moment of anger arises and one lacks mindfulness, it will take control of their actions and speech. However, if one is fully present, they will recognize that anger is merely a fleeting mental phenomenon, without any intrinsic reality. By observing it without attachment, it naturally fades away, like a passing cloud in the sky. This is the way a practitioner contemplates the mind, gradually unraveling the entanglements of delusion and attaining inner tranquility. Freud's psychoanalysis emphasizes the unconscious as a crucial part of human psychology, a repository of repressed memories, traumas, desires, and invisible forces that shape behavior. According to Freud, the unconscious exerts a profound influence on an individual's psychological life, even if they are unaware of it. Therefore, in psychoanalysis, bringing unconscious elements to light is an essential method for helping individuals understand themselves, adjust their behavior, and resolve internal conflicts. In Buddhism, the concept of Alaya Vijnana, storehouse consciousness, in Yogacara, Vijnanavada, philosophy bears many similarities to Freud's notion of the unconscious. Alaya Vijnana is seen as a vast repository that holds all karmic seeds, bijas, including thoughts, emotions, habits, and actions accumulated over countless lifetimes. Everything a person thinks, speaks, and does is recorded in this storehouse, much like an archive preserving all experiences within consciousness. When the right conditions arise, these seeds mature and manifest as corresponding experiences and circumstances. However, there is a significant difference between Alaya Vijnana and Freud's unconscious. In psychoanalysis, the unconscious is seen as a fixed, passive aspect of the psyche, and uncovering repressed elements can help individuals overcome psychological trauma. In contrast, Alaya Vijnana is not merely a static storehouse but a dynamic and ever-changing entity, shaped by the karmic seeds one sows. Through the practice of mindfulness and meditation, practitioners can purify Alaya Vijnana, replacing unwholesome seeds with wholesome ones, thereby transforming karmic tendencies and progressing toward enlightenment. Meditation is a vital method in Buddhism that enables individuals to observe the inner workings of the mind and gain mastery over it. Modern psychology also emphasizes the role of autosuggestion, the ability to influence the mind through positive affirmations. Scientific studies suggest that when a person repeatedly reinforces a certain thought, it gradually imprints on the subconscious, leading to changes in thinking, emotions, and behavior. In Buddhism, meditation is not merely a relaxation technique or a means of improving concentration, it is a direct path to enlightenment. When a practitioner engages in meditative insight, vipassana, they do not simply observe the mind but learn how to transform unwholesome mental states. For instance, when a person experiences anxiety or distress, if they know how to sit quietly, turn inward, and objectively observe their emotions without judgment or attachment, these emotions will naturally subside. This is the fundamental principle of vipassana meditation, allowing one to directly perceive the nature of phenomena without being swept away by emotional turbulence. Additionally, Buddhism teaches other forms of meditation, such as metta-bhavana, loving-kindness meditation, in which the practitioner cultivates love and compassion toward themselves and all beings. This practice can be seen as a type of positive autosuggestion, where one repeatedly generates thoughts of love, forgiveness, and benevolence, gradually replacing negative mental patterns and fostering inner peace. In modern psychology, emotional therapy helps individuals recognize and regulate negative emotions, enabling them to adopt healthier behavioral patterns. However, in Buddhism, emotional management goes beyond mere regulation. It involves deep insight into the root causes of suffering and their transformation at the most fundamental level. The Four Noble Truths, Katariyarya Sakani, form the foundation of the Buddha's teachings, providing a framework for understanding suffering and its cessation. 1. The truth of suffering, dukkha, recognizing that life is inherently characterized by suffering, including birth, aging, sickness, and death, as well as the suffering caused by craving, hatred, and delusion. 2. The truth of the origin of suffering, samudaya, understanding that suffering arises from attachment and ignorance. Humans are bound by desires, attachments, and illusions about a permanent self. 3. The truth of the cessation of suffering, nirodha, realizing that suffering can end if its causes are eradicated, leading to the attainment of nirvana. 4. The truth of the path to the end of suffering, magga, the practical path to liberation, known as the Noble Eightfold Path, which consists of right view, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. In psychological therapy, when individuals recognize the root of their psychological struggles, they can seek solutions to overcome them. Similarly, in Buddhism, when a practitioner deeply understands the Four Noble Truths, they learn to avoid being controlled by emotions and negative thoughts that lead to suffering. Instead of being governed by emotions, they develop the ability to observe them objectively, recognize their impermanent nature, and ultimately let go, living with greater awareness and clarity. Another key similarity between Buddhism and modern psychology is their shared emphasis on the role of perception in shaping human experience. In cognitive psychology, it is understood that how a person interprets an event determines their emotional and behavioral response. For example, when faced with failure, if a person views it as a learning opportunity, they will be motivated to improve. But if they perceive it as a personal misfortune, they may fall into depression and self-doubt. Similarly, Buddhism teaches that all phenomena arise from the mind. When the mind is at peace, external circumstances become manageable. But when the mind is disturbed, even the most favorable conditions can still feel unsettling. Thus, despite originating from different traditions, Buddhism and modern psychology share profound similarities in their approaches to the mind, emotions, and inner transformation. By integrating insights from both disciplines, individuals can gain a deeper understanding of themselves and cultivate a life of greater peace and awareness. Mindfulness in Buddhism is not merely a practice but a way of life, a path of cultivation leading to awakening. Mindfulness, sati, is one of the 8 factors of the Noble Eightfold Path, the way to the cessation of suffering as taught by the Buddha. In today's world, mindfulness is no longer confined to the domain of Buddhism but has been widely applied in psychotherapy, helping individuals cope with stress, anxiety, and suffering in daily life. Mindfulness-based therapy is an integration of meditation practice and modern psychological science. Methods such as mindfulness-based stress reduction, MBSR, by John Kabat-Zinn, and mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, MBCT, have demonstrated effectiveness in reducing stress, anxiety, depression, and other psychological issues. In these therapies, practitioners are guided to observe their thoughts, emotions, and bodily sensations objectively without judgment or attachment, allowing for a deeper understanding of the workings of their own mind. In Buddhism, mindfulness not only helps individuals regulate emotions but also fosters wisdom and compassion. When one practices mindfulness, they begin to see the impermanent nature of all phenomena. Modern psychology also acknowledges that when people change their perspective on a situation, they can alter their reactions to difficulties. For example, when someone experiences failure, if they see it as an opportunity for learning, they gain motivation to continue. However, if they perceive it as a loss, they may fall into depression and despair. This illustrates the similarity between mindfulness in Buddhism and cognitive approaches in psychotherapy. Meditation, samatha and vipassana, is an essential component of mindfulness practice. Meditation not only calms the mind but also has significant effects on the brain and physical health. Scientific research has shown that meditation can alter brain structure, enhancing focus, reducing stress, and improving emotional regulation. A study by Harvard University found that regular meditators exhibit increased gray matter density in brain regions associated with memory, emotions, and self-awareness. This evidence proves that meditation is not only a spiritual practice but also has practical benefits for human well-being. However, meditation is not merely a technique for relaxation or stress reduction. In Buddhism, meditation is a path to developing wisdom and attaining enlightenment. When one engages in insight meditation, they do not stop at observing the mind but delve deeply into the nature of reality, perceiving the truths of impermanence, suffering, and non-self. This is where modern psychology has yet to reach, as it primarily focuses on helping individuals maintain mental stability. While Buddhism leads one to liberation from the cycle of birth and death, compassion and altruism are crucial elements in psychological healing. In Buddhism, loving kindness, metta, and compassion, karuna, form the foundation of ethical conduct and spiritual practice. When people learn to love, forgive, and accept others, they can heal their inner wounds and find peace. Studies in psychology also indicate that those who cultivate gratitude and altruism tend to experience greater happiness, lower levels of depression, and healthier social relationships. In modern psychotherapy, therapists often encourage patients to practice gratitude and forgiveness as a means of healing psychological wounds. This aligns with the practice of loving-kindness meditation, metta bhavana, in Buddhism, where practitioners extend thoughts of love and well-being to themselves and all sentient beings. As one deepens their loving-kindness practice, they gradually transform their outlook on life, becoming less judgmental, reducing anger, and experiencing greater inner peace. Thus, the application of Buddhism in modern psychotherapy goes beyond stress reduction or emotional regulation. It helps individuals reshape their perception of life, develop wisdom and compassion, and cultivate a more awakened and fulfilling existence. If these methods are properly integrated, people can find balance in life, overcome difficulties, and attain inner peace. Through our exploration of the relationship between Buddhism and psychology, we see that the teachings of the Buddha, though over 2,000 years old, remain deeply relevant to modern scientific discoveries. While psychology provides tools to understand the workings of the mind, Buddhism goes further. It offers a path to liberation, enabling not just understanding but profound transformation of consciousness. Today, as society advances, people face increasing stress, anxiety, and uncertainty. Psychology seeks to explain and heal, but Buddhism addresses the root causes of suffering. Principles such as impermanence, dependent origination, karma, and meditation are not merely theoretical concepts but practical paths for inner transformation. Both psychology and Buddhism agree on one fundamental truth: the human mind is not fixed, it can be trained and transformed. In psychology, there is the concept of neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself. In Buddhism, the Buddha taught that every wholesome thought, every moment of mindfulness, plants the seeds of well-being and positively shapes consciousness. So, knowing this, how should we apply it to our lives? When faced with difficulties, we can learn to observe our mind instead of reacting impulsively. When overwhelmed by negative emotions, we can practice meditation and mindfulness to transform rather than be consumed by them. When caught in anxiety and fear, we can remember the principle of impermanence, understanding that all things change, allowing us to remain at peace. When suffering arises, we can recognize that we ourselves create our karma, and thus, we can consciously sow the seeds of wholesome actions. Psychology helps us understand, but Buddhism gives us the tools to practice. Only through understanding and practice can true transformation take place. Whether it is psychology or Buddhism, whether it is science or philosophy, ultimately, all aim toward a common goal: to help people find peace, live meaningfully, and stand resilient amidst life's storms. When we understand ourselves deeply, we are no longer victims of negative emotions and thoughts. When we master our minds, we no longer drown in suffering, anger, or delusion. Each of us has the capacity to heal, to find our own path to awakening. The Buddha does not grant blessings, nor does he save us. He is merely a guide, illuminating the path of wisdom. If we are willing to practice, to contemplate, then surely, the door to liberation will open before us. May we all have the good fortune to encounter this profound teaching, not just to understand it intellectually but to apply it in daily life, bringing peace and true happiness to ourselves and those around us.